Man, we made a big mistake never mentioning Chris Spielman much on this show, but we should more. We'll talk to Justin Rogers from the Detroit News about it on today's Locked On Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And it is a Wednesday edition, everybody, of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Matt Dery with you Wednesday, March 22nd into Thursday, March 23rd. Thanks for checking us out wherever you get your podcast, but thank you especially for subscribing and watching us for free on YouTube, the Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Coming up on the show today, Justin Rogers from the Detroit News. Great expose/feature on Chris Spielman, who, of course, is in the front office with the Lions as a special assistant to Sheila Hamp and Rod Wood. Spielman sat down for a chat with Justin. We're going to get Justin's thoughts on it, also the draft, free agency, and everything with the Lions beat writer from the Detroit News. Follow us on Twitter at Dery Speaks, Dery Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter, the Matt Dery Facebook fan page, LockedOnLions.com, and again, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, free and streaming on the Locked On Lions YouTube channel. This piece on Chris Spielman is excellent by Justin Rogers at the Detroit News. And one thing I want to say about it is it shows where this organization has gone over the last few years, because in the past, a collaborative approach, a lot of chefs in the kitchen was a disaster for the Lions. They never had structure from the top down. And it showed in their record and in their history and everything else. And when Chris Spielman came aboard, remember, Chris Spielman was hired before Brad Holmes, before Dan Campbell, and yet his role with the team has been so vital and so important as somebody behind the scenes who's staying out of the way, that is a great sounding board for ownership, a great sounding board for the franchise, and also for Brad Holmes. And go to detnews.com and check out what Justin wrote on Chris Spielman. We're going to talk to Justin about it momentarily, but it's a credit to the organization and the franchise that they've got a good structure in place. Everybody's picking them to win the division. You've got Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk today speculating that if the Lions just added Lamar Jackson, that would put them over the top and they'd be a Super Bowl contender. Now, I don't think that's what the Lions are going to do. They're going to stick with Jared Goff. They've got him under contract for 2 more years. He's done a really good job. Why mess up the apple cart, spend 2 first-round picks to the Ravens? Nobody's spending 2 first-round picks on Lamar Jackson right now. But the organization is in very good shape, for sure. And we'll talk to Justin about it coming up next. First, though, I want to tell you about our friends at Ultimate Football GM. We've been telling you about this fun interactive game for the last few months now. And really, it's a mobile game that I can tell you about. But really, what you need to do is go to ultimate-gm.com and look it up, or check it out on the app stores. It's your chance to run your own franchise at Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a general manager, managing your own team, you can do that with this game, and it's definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team. You'll play through the season, lead your team to glory by trying to build a dynasty. What do you do at Ultimate Football GM? Well, you hire and fire coaches and coordinators. You trade for players. You navigate your franchise through the draft. All of that with this cool game board, which you can play offline. Locked On Lions listeners, you're going to get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo Locked On, LOCKEDON, in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. It's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Man, I'll tell you, great timing having this guy on. Justin Rogers is with us from the Detroit News. He's covered the Detroit Lions for a long time now. And I hit you up yesterday, JR, and said, come on the show. I had no idea this giant Chris Spielman expose would come out, and now you're a big media star. How about that?
Big media star. That's what we all aim for. Just waiting for the pardon my take call.
Well, stop. I think honestly, this was as good a work as you've had, and you've written some great pieces. But this Spielman piece is awesome. How did this all come about?
Well, first, let me say that let me give a little credit to my employer here. Uh, Last year, we expanded the staff, got a general assignment reporter who um, has been pretty Lions focused and helped me a lot. Nolan Bianchi, I don't know if you've run into him at
I
any of
know
the stops.
Nolan. Oh,
Oh
of
yeah,
course.
did one
Yeah,
of the Lockdown podcasts in your little
that's
crew.
correct. Oh yeah.
Nolan has made my life so much easier just having, I guess, a little bit of a valve to release some of the pressure of the job. And so it's opened me up to explore some of the things that I've wanted to. With Spielman specifically, long time. I've been working on this for a while. I was telling you before we went on here, like I would get an email a week, and maybe more frequently early and maybe a little less frequently now, but just, hey, what is Chris Spielman up to in this role he's in? And at some point, it's just like, I don't know. I see him all the time, but I don't know what he's doing. And, I'd put in some early interview requests in that first year, and those were rejected by him. Didn't want to do anything in season. We couldn't get our schedules to line up last off season. And, finally got things to line up here in late February. So like 15 months, I think, after I initially started kind of
Wow.
trying to get in and talk to him, the stars aligned. And look, I mean, we've all known Chris for a long time through his playing days, through his broadcast days, but he kind of did shut off the accessibility there since he's been in this role. And so it was refreshing to sit down with him for about an hour at the practice facility, and kind of just go over what life looks like for Chris Spielman in season, off season, and some of the stuff I think I probably expected or knew just from seeing it in terms of like what role he had during like practices and stuff like that. But some of the behind the scenes stuff that he's doing at Ford Field, the development of his scouting eye beyond linebackers was really revelatory to me.
Yeah, what football 101, and
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And also the one quote in there about, I wish I could read it, but it was like something to the effect of he had to make sure to tell the team around him, Brad Holmes and others, like, I'm not here to take your job. I just want to have this role, stay in my lane, been in the game long enough. And that's huge because obviously there was questions like, wait a minute, didn't Spielman help hire Holmes, but maybe, you don't think Chris couldn't be a GM? His brother was. So that goes to show that all he wants to do is win. And be a part of a winner. And that's important to have in turning this culture around, isn't it?
I loved the whole story about hiring Holmes, right? And just like how he was almost like removing himself from the scene and watching it from above, and how excited he was to watching a man experience the culmination of all his hard work and getting the dream job and calling his wife. And he goes, I think I kissed him. I'm not sure. I think I kissed him on the top of his head. It's like that's his true and authentic passion for just helping everyone else is really what stood out. And the GM stuff came up in that introductory press conference where it was announced he was being hired by Sheila and Rod, and he kind of said the same thing, like it would be unfair to this organization to even project me into that role because I'm not prepared for it. I'm just not. And now 2 years later he's saying, I don't want that. Like that's not my ambition. His sole ambition is for the Lions to win a Super Bowl. And it was interesting for me to hear him say his playing career in his eyes was a failure. And it's ridiculous almost to hear that because he's the all-time tackle leader, got Pro Bowls, and he's in the Lions Ring of Honor. Like it was a great career. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame, I believe.
Yeah.
But because he did not win a Super Bowl, he considers his career a failure. And so this whole thing is about closing that hole in his resume. And I'm sure he would have rather have done it a player, but if it ever happens, he'll almost get equal joy out of playing the role that he's playing to getting this organization there.
Justin Rogers from the Detroit News. Check out that piece, detnews.com, on Chris Spielman. Last thing on him, and we were joking before I came on, but I always refer to Allen Park as 222 Rodwood Drive. Chris is in the background. I mean, this will be the third draft and they put the cameras in there now. The Lions media team does a great job. It's not good. It's great with that behind the scenes stuff.
No doubt.
And but you see Rod sitting in between Brad, and I don't want to turn this into a Rod Wood show, but Chris he's in the room, but I don't think he wants to be in the background. Did you ask him about that?
Not specifically. I think it was just kind of the undercurrent of the whole situation, how long it took me to get him to go on record. And as far as I know, I know he's done, a few small things here and there. He did a radio interview in Arizona talking about Dave Sears, and I think he's, talked about his brother, but it's the first time he's really gone into what he's doing and not made it about himself, but talked about himself. And so, this is the way he likes it. He wants to be in the background. He wants to be the wind in everyone else's sails, to get to where they want to go. And, it seems like it's going really well. And you mentioned the football 101 thing. It's, that brought me back to a conversation because I got, the chance to sit down with Sheila last year. And she had told me in that conversation how many walls existed between Ford Field and Allen Park, and how she didn't like that when she inherited, the ownership. And so it was her desire and goal to kind of bring the family together, if you will. So she was, doing events where she would, go over there. She'd invite Ford Field leadership to Allen Park because many of them had never even been there. She was hosting family barbecues for everyone. And Chris is now like an extension of that, an accentuation of that. He's not just running the football 101 class, which is really cool to be able to teach people coverages and schemes. And he's also doing film study and Q&A every Tuesday after the game to answer people's questions about, what did or didn't happen in that game, and then providing a scouting report for the next opponent. It's such forward thinking to make everyone feel like they're a part of the organization. I think it's a neat approach. And you talk all the time in sports about getting everybody rowing in the same direction. They're doing that in earnest.
Transparency, and it seems to be working because not saying that the assistant chef who's sitting in football 101 is going to help with the football team, but yeah, like you said, they all feel like they're a part of the team, and it makes for a great culture, that's for sure. Justin Rogers with us from the Detroit News. I want to ask you about the draft and Jalen Carter and all these things. We're going to do that coming up next. First, though, I got to tell folks about FanDuel, official sports betting partner, of course, of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Do this. Log on. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn right now to learn more about that no-sweat first bet, up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Justin Rogers with us from the Detroit News. By the way, how much fun, JR, are you having? This is like a total 180. I mean, this is nuts. Everybody's picking the Lions to win the division. Was it Kyle Brandt yesterday? Good Morning Football doing 5 minutes on the Lions. And it's almost like who's not talking about the Detroit Lions right now? And you were on the ground floor. Don't you feel like, oh, where have you been? Or are you kind of embracing that everybody's on the bandwagon here?
No, look, I've said this for years, the disrespect card. The fans love playing it. Oh, the national media is not talking about us, so they're glossing over our game this week. And I've always said, why should ESPN waste time talking about you? Conversation, and you didn't get it the first year at Campbell, and you didn't deserve it, obviously, with 3 wins. And then you get Hard Knocks, and of course some of the personalities shine through. It's a perfect opportunity to take a bad team that's got some personality and get them out there. But what did they do with that? They won. And they won 8 of their last 10 games. So they finished the season with this huge wave of positive momentum. Now they're signing guys, which they didn't really do the first couple of years of Brad Holmes. They're signing some fits that are not massive expenditures. They're smarter contracts for good players. They've got a lot of draft equity left over with that remaining pick from the Stafford trade, giving them 2 first-rounders. They got a second rounder from the Hawkinson deal. So, yeah, this thing is on the upswing. But I think we'll know, like, look, if it doesn't take a step forward, you'll fall by the wayside in those national conversations really quickly. They'll move to the next shiny thing. So you have an opportunity to capitalize on this national attention, to become in a lot of ways like an America's team, right? Like
Yeah.
I think people I talk to in the sports media, people I've interviewed, for example, Chuck Smith, the former pass rush specialist who just got hired by Baltimore as a coach. He's like, people down here are rooting for the Lions. Like everyone, I think, wants to see this team succeed in the same way I think maybe the Cubs kind of fit in that mantra for a really long time. Like everybody's ready for the Lions to get off of their woe is me misery and become a contender. So yeah, it's refreshing to see, and the personalities in that building, the people that they are, merit this attention with that success.
What does the move of C.J. Gardner-Johnson mean? Is that a statement that we're going for it when you bring a player like that in, like this?
I don't know if that's how I would characterize it. It's a chance to add a good player, a young player, a proven player from a winning culture to a mix that still could use a little bit of that, like a secret ingredient, right? Like the 1 year deal tells me like it's not a full on commitment. It's still kind of a maybe a prove it or a bridge to what's next. But the secondary was a problem last year, and the depth of the secondary in particular was a problem that last year. And so you add CJ, who has had success in New Orleans, who's had success in Philadelphia, who has a relationship and a schematic understanding with Aaron Glenn. You add a extremely smart, versatile player in Cam Sutton. You add a physical guy on the rise in Emmanuel Mosley, who is coming off an ACL, but looked really, really good before that injury. And it's a commitment to aggressively revamping what you saw as a roster weakness in a budget-friendly way with really good players.
What does it mean for JeffFukudo then? I mean, you're talking all of a sudden, let's say they drafted a corner at 6, which I'm not ruling out, although I wouldn't say it's the favorite now in Vegas, but all these guys, Will Harris coming back, Jerry Jacobs.
Yeah.
If you're going to start the season with this 4-2-5, it's going to be Walker and Joseph and Mosley and Sutton and Johnson. I didn't say Okuda. What does that mean for him?
Yeah, I mean it's all speculative right now, right? But you start to look at the writing on the wall and reading the tea leaves or whatever. I never thought Okuda's 5th-year option was going to get picked up. I think that was fairly clear by the end of last season. Maybe at the halfway point, we were legitimately debating whether it was a possibility. And by the end of the year, it was like, no, it's not going to happen. And then to go out as aggressively as they did, I'm not entirely convinced, and I have nothing to back this up presently, like no inside information, but I'm not convinced JeffFukudo will be on this roster in week 1. I have a lot of good things to say about JeffFukudo more than bad things, right? Like I think it speaks very highly to his football character that he came back as quickly as he did from as devastating of an injury as he suffered in a torn Achilles, which is one of the absolute worst for a guy that requires, the ability to burst and change directions. The way he throws himself into the run game, that Dallas game epitomizes it. 15 tackles, just took a physical beating that game to play a role, right? Like I think the football character is really high with JeffFukudo. The coverage has been average. I think it's not atrocious, but it hasn't been good. It certainly hasn't been number 3 pick good. But people really, really love this guy coming out of college, not just the Lions brass. Like I tell this story kind of frequently, but I was kind of digging around before that draft, and I talked to a scout, a Midwest scout who Okuda's school was in his purview, and I said, tell me what you think of this kid. And he goes, honestly, it's not where we're drafting, it's not our needs, but if it was, I would have no problem telling my GM to draft this guy number 1 overall in this draft. And I said ahead of Chase. He said ahead of Chase, and Chase is in my thing too. He goes, He's everything from a physical standpoint, from a character standpoint to football IQ. He's like, this guy is an absolute dude. And so multiple people felt this way about JeffFukudo, right? And so injuries kind of take that shine off. But I could see, you know how it is with coaches in this league, the ego is always there that they're the guy that could fix something, right? There's going to be general managers and coaches in this league that are going to look at JeffFukudo and see a bargain price tag, and I don't know what the contract is. It's just like $5 million with the roster bonus, but like $5 million for a cornerback is not all that much for a starting caliber quarterback. So and they do have that 5th-year option still if another team picks them up. So I could see some trade interest. I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to pull you back a 1st rounder or even a day 2 pick, but could I see a team offering a 5th or a 6th round pick for JeffFukudo and the Lions just saying, yep, we're moving on. We'll take the extra little draft asset. I think it's absolutely a possibility.
Justin Rogers with us, DetNews.com and the Detroit News, of course. All right, so mock drafts are out there. You're going to do 50 of them more before the next month.
Only 3. We only do 3, Matt.
So
that's my self-imposed limit to my employer.
We got to get you and Nolan Bianchi to do a podcast, just like Ben Raven and Kyle Meinke. What do you think?
Who's paying for it? I don't do anything more for free anymore, Matt.
Is Phil Ashura over there at the News still? We'll get Phil.
No, I think Phil's been gone for 6 years. You got to get up to date.
But all right, so focus here. So Jalen Carter, he'll be there at 6. 4 quarterbacks going to go ahead of the Lions. Here we go. Is that happening or no? Like, is she? Because we know the Sheila history, you know the Ford history with players with warts. And obviously, look, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson got into a fight with Michael Thomas in practice, and he's not exactly squeaky clean. He was killing the Eagles, killing the Saints out of town. But what about the Jalen Carter thing? Because that's like the one need left is you throw him in that defense. But dude was in jail a month ago.
Yeah. So I was at the Combine early and, of course, just poking and prodding around and a lot of casual off-record conversations. But there was this undercurrent of a message that the Lions weren't enamored with what Carter was character-wise, not necessarily personality, but like the football character. They didn't love it. And then I think it was 2 days later, the misdemeanor warrants came out. Obviously, that's since been settled with a plea deal, and he's getting his punishment. And I don't want to diminish what that is because it's horrific. And from someone who lost their father in an auto accident, fully have empathy and understanding to the situation. But I also was 21 at one point and know the dumb decisions we make and how sometimes they can be isolated or those are the wake-up calls. And unfortunately in this case there was lives lost. Like it's awful, but I don't think we can judge him singularly on this one instance. But you follow that up with the pro day, right? Yeah. He shows up overweight. He doesn't do the athletic testing that he also skipped at the Combine, so he doesn't get anybody a chance to get the 3-cone drill or the 40-yard dash and vertical jump. And you might say that stuff doesn't matter, but it's check marks for scouts to just say, hey, what we saw in film is actually here in the athletic testing. He does agree to do the positional drills, can't finish. He's out of shape. Yeah. And to me, more than anything else, and again, I don't like that I'm having to compare and contrast these two things, but we know the NFL talent trumps all sometimes in an unfortunate way. But if you can't show the commitment and the drive to be at your best now, what gives you the confidence that he'll always give you the commitment and drive to be at his best when maybe times are rough? Maybe there's a contract situation he doesn't like. Maybe he has a conflict with his position coach. Are you going to get a guy that, has that unending passion to be great. And Dan Campbell talks about it. Brad Holmes talks about it, bringing in the right players, the right character fits, the guys that want to be here, the guys that have chips on their shoulder. And I have a hard time seeing it. And it's very unfortunate for them because I think there's not a more obvious position of need to have a dominant defensive tackle.
Right.
He is the most dominant defensive tackle, and I think there's a fairly steep drop-off to Group B that would be available at pick 18. But, if you are constantly emphasizing being consistent in everything you do, in your message, in your approach, in your roster-building strategy, this is, on the surface, a deviation. This would be a deviation from that, and so it's for that reason I just don't think it would happen. I think the Lions would pass, and that's it's opinion. It's opinion based on at least a little knowledge, but not definitive knowledge. But all things considered, I just don't think the Lions are in on that.
Oh, that's great insight, Justin. I appreciate it, and we'll have you back on after the draft when they take Anthony Richardson. Then.
I know you're joking, but let me tell you,
you never know.
I'm enamored with Anthony Richardson.
Oh, no.
I am the talent is so crazy, and then to talk to him at the combine, you saw that edge that you like to see in players, that competitive fire. There's two guys that went to the combine I know are controversial, him and Bijan Robinson. I just left the combine. I was like, I like those players even more than I liked them coming in. So if the Lions drafted either, you're not going to get any complaints from this guy because I think they're going to be good from a media perspective, if nothing else.
Nice. All right, brother. Great to see you. Thanks for doing it.
Of course, anytime. Justin
Rogers with us from the Detroit News, DetNews.com on the Lions beat. Check out his latest piece out today on Chris Spielman. That's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions.